Cracks are emerging between Israel and its longtime ally, the US. The rift between the two sides is becoming more prominent, with Washington making its strongest public criticism on Israel's conduct in Gaza. This comes as Israeli troops force hundreds of displaced families to flee Jabalia refugee camp in the north and Rafah city in the south. Israeli tanks were seen in combat mode as they continued the military operations in many parts of Gaza, destroying several military facilities of Hamas, including underground tunnels and shafts. The IDF says it targeted Gaza city's southern edge, Zaytun, and raided Jabalia and its surrounding areas in the northern Gaza Strip, killing a number of Palestinian militants. The health ministry in Hamas-run Gaza says that the besieged Palestinian territory's health system is hours away from collapse due to the lack of the necessary fuel to operate generators in hospitals, ambulances, and for vehicles to transport staff. It said fighting has blocked fuel shipments through key crossings. The ministry says the death toll of civilians in Gaza has crossed 35,000. As thousands of Gazans take refuge in Deir al-Balah, the displaced civilians have set up sprawling tented settlements in the town, including along the Mediterranean seashore. On the battlefield, an Israeli airstrike in the Sabra neighborhood of Gaza City has killed a senior member of a Palestinian militant group called Democratic Front. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Israel lacks credible plans to protect some 1.4 million civilians in Rafah. He warns that Israeli attack in the southern city of Gaza can create an insurgency by failing to kill all Hamas militants.
Israel's on the trajectory potentially to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves, a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas.
According to reports, to discuss ceasefire efforts and humanitarian aid access in Gaza, the Turkish intelligence chief Ibrahim Kalin engaged in talks with Hamas officials, including Ismail Haniyeh in Doha. The Turkish president has also slammed US and Europe for not doing enough to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. He believes there is not enough pressure on Israel to make them agree to a truce, which Hamas has accepted earlier. This comes as Turkey has time and again denounced Israel's attacks on Gaza. Ankara has also decided to join South Africa's initiative to have Israel tried for war crimes, along with Egypt, who has announced its intention to formally support South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice. On the humanitarian side, Israel has opened new aid crossing into the Gaza Strip in coordination with the US, and that's according to the IDF. The crossing is called Western Erez. It has been opened in the northern Gaza Strip in order to transfer humanitarian aid. We're now being joined by Glenn Carl, who's a former national intelligence officer from the CIA and national security and foreign policy expert. He's joining us live from Boston. Glenn, good to see you, and thank you very much for making time for us. Let's try and analyze the statement made by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He says that Israel lacks credible plans to protect some 1.4 million civilians in Rafah. He also warned that Israeli attack in the southern city of Gaza can create an insurgency by failing to kill all Hamas militants. Your response?
Well, I think the Secretary of State is spot on. It's, I think, been clear, at least from my perspective, but the perspective of many, many, that Israel never had a likely prospect of destroying Hamas through a military action, through an invasion of Gaza. And that has been the case. Unless the Israelis were to kill all of the Palestinians, I'm not being facetious, it is almost certain that Hamas would survive because they are not widely supported by all Palestinians who are less extremist in their views, generally speaking, but they do have the sympathy of being resistance to Israeli domination. So that is one aspect of the dilemma. And then, as Secretary Blinken said, the second one is, absent a plan for what happens after the war, there's no likely alternative right now to fill the vacuum created by the destruction from the invasion. So it is a bleak future if Israel continues its invasion. And it's a bleak future if Israel stops, because Hamas, we shouldn't be naive about this, is a hideous institution that is vowed to kill every Jew and destroy Israel. So it is not a happy way forward.
Mr. Carl, let's also analyze something, or the latest development right now. We see that Egypt has decided to announce its intention to join South Africa or formally support South Africa in their bid at the International Court of Justice. And now Turkey has joined the party. What's the impact of that?
Well, that's a harder question to answer for me. I don't really know what the impact will be. I mean, it certainly increases pressure internationally, diplomatically, on Israel. Israel has, through its invasion, progressively isolated itself and even strained, as much as I've ever seen in my lifetime, relations with the United States. What diplomatic isolation does is make it slowly more difficult for Israel going forward, either with respect to the Gazan war or afterwards. But I don't think it will be decisive at all in changing Israel's positions. What will do that, if ever, is internal to Israel, a change in the balance of power among the various factions of far right and moderate center and left, and that no one has found a way forward, despite years of millions of Israelis demonstrating against the policies and man of Netanyahu himself.
All right, I've been talking to Glenn Carl, who's a former national intelligence officer from the CIA and national security and foreign policy expert. Mr. Glenn, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Anytime, thanks.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.